And so I started to dive into this. And then as fate would have it, this whole gut-brain connection thing fell into my lap after I was sitting in my naturopath's office. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Like crying. And I'm like, I don't really know. Like I'm studying this and none of it's making sense. And she just looked at me and she was like, do you want to talk about how your depression is linked to your IBS? And I was like, what are you talking about? And just like so confused. And so we spoke more about how this whole gut brain connection and how you can use food to help your moods and how your moods can really influence your foods. And just it's a two-way street and working that together. And so that's really what set me on my nerdy ways of using food as like, I mean, medicine is like the new hot thing to say, but really it's just a thing that sets you free when you know how to use it properly. To figure out what's going, you have to welcome yourself home. But to do that, you have to trust yourself. When we eat in this way, we live intuitively, we're more focused at work, we show up better for our partners. You know, there isn't this anxiety and depression that's creeping in, which nowadays everyone has it. Like it's something that we're all struggling with. And I know this is the silent pandemic that is also going on right now. And so when we can really understand how to use these foods and lower this whole reaction in this nervous system and all this kind of stuff, we get back to being ourselves.
This is the Energy Within podcast, all about accessing, nurturing, and building your energy and confidence so that you can design your life the way you want. My name is Carrie Jokala. I am your host. I am a Reiki practitioner, a fitness instructor, a wife, a mom to 2 little boys, and I'm so blessed to have you here listening to this podcast. I hope that it has been providing some value for you. I hope that the slight change in focus and branding has been beneficial for you. I would love to hear your thoughts, to know how the content has been helping you, to know what you need more of. Today is a super fun conversation with Laura Martin, who is a digestive health specialist. And we kept talking throughout the interview about how a lot of this stuff just doesn't sound sexy, but that really doesn't matter because it's a really exciting and informative conversation that we all need to have. Going back to listening to your intuition and applying it in the physical sense. A lot of times we've been talking about intuition in a spiritual or emotional capacity, and today we're going to talk about it physically. It is all connected. It is all about learning how to tune in and pay attention to what your body is trying to tell you. Your body is talking to you all the time. Many of us have just forgotten how to listen. We've gotten used to things. We've labeled things as normal that don't have to be normal because they're not normal. A lot of us have given up on the idea that we have control over what's going on in our bodies or that we can change things. That if we wind up finding out that something's wrong with us, we just accept that, okay, well, this is my new normal. This is the way it is. And I don't believe that it has to be that way. I really don't. So I wanted to bring Laura on because her story and her mission really stuck out to me. There is a big connection, big connection between our gut health and our brain health. And it all starts with the gut. We think everything starts with the brain and that's where all of our chemicals are stored and that's where they come from. But it actually all starts in the gut. I've been learning more and more over recent years about gut health and how much our gut plays a role. And that's the thing, like gut is not a sexy word. It sounds gross. It doesn't sound exciting. People don't want to talk about gut health. They want to talk about how can I lose weight? They want to talk about how can I lose weight quickly? What foods do I need to cut out? What do I need to do to get rid of this symptom or that symptom with a quick fix? And you'll hear Laura talk about how we need to go back to the the foundation, how we need to go back to listening to and trusting our body and what it's telling us. If you really want your physical energy to be better, if you want the brain fog to go away, if you want to get rid of the stress and other things that are weighing you down and hindering you from designing your life the way you want to, I bet you'll find that a lot of it starts in your gut. So I won't ramble on too much longer. I'll let Laura tell you all about it. Here we go. Laura, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I'm really excited for this conversation today.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you start and just kind of explain what it is that you do?
Yeah. So my name is Laura Martin. I am a digestive health specialist specializing in helping women that struggle with IBS to heal using the gut-brain connection, which sounds super sciencey, but it's really just helping women get back to eating normally again. Because when you get this diagnosis, you're just like, I can't eat anything. And you like freak out. And really, it doesn't need to be that way. And, Dr. Google is just very overwhelming. So trying to keep it simple.
Dr. Google, why haven't I heard that before? That makes so much sense. Dr. Google. I think we always talk about WebMD. Like, don't go to WebMD, you're going to die.
Exactly.
So was IBS something that you always suffered with and just how soon was it diagnosed? Like, kind of tell me the story behind that.
Yeah. So, the short version is I had struggled for years, but they didn't really have the language around it when I was younger. So I had it, looking back on it, I had it since I was young. Like my mom was outside that bathroom, like singing songs to me so that I could poop, all this kind of stuff. And I thought that was normal. Like I was just like, oh yeah, like this is just like the way it is. And like, let me just take some Miralax here and there, and just didn't really understand it. And then at the same time, I was also struggling with anxiety-induced depression. And so I never put these two things together, and I always chase them separately. And as I grew on my health journey and grew through my life, I realized and I feel like a lot of people can relate to that, is like these symptoms seem normal for a long time, and then something happens and you're just like knocked on your butt and you're just like, I should have been listening that whole time. And that's exactly what happened to me. My health took a horrible turn. I was left just like I couldn't work because a skin rash took over my entire body. My period went missing for 5 years.
Oh my God.
Bloating was beyond painful. Like everything flared me up. Everything was cramping me. And so I didn't have a life anymore because I was so afraid of food, and went down this whole rabbit hole. And at the same time was wildly depressed and anxious and just didn't go out to eat, didn't do anything. And I was just like, well, like if these low FODMAP diets and these eliminations and these medications were working, shouldn't I feel better? Not like worse? And so I started to get really inquisitive about all this kind of stuff. And that's how I ended up creating this method. I teach the free method, where it's not about removing foods. It's getting to the root issue, going back to when this all started years ago when I was 10 years old and how I was raised and all this other stuff that really impacts it. So yeah, the short version is I had IBS for honestly my whole life, like up until 3.5 years ago. I've been in remission now from both anxiety, depression, and IBS for 3 years.
What led you to realizing that food itself was not only the issue, but the way to heal?
I went on a path. My background was psychology, right? And communications. And then my foreground, I was like sitting in a cafe one time when I was in the middle of Thailand. And I was like, and my friend, I was like, I don't know what to do with my life. Like, I don't want to be a teacher, but what do I do? And she's like, you should probably study food. Like, you really like food, like in a very unhealthy way. Because at that time I was very obsessed with nutrition, trying to heal myself. And she was like, why not go back and, study it? And so I was like, okay. So I did that. But as I was studying this nutrition stuff, I was just like, got super, super focused on it. Like I was my own lab rat. And I was just like, okay, let's try this all. And nothing was working. So then I went back and I got certified to become a digestive health specialist. And I was like, and even those methods, I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why would I be eliminating all these different foods? And why can't my body digest this stuff? Like, shouldn't I be able to enjoy pizza and wine without freaking out? Like, isn't that normal? Like, just because it's common in IBS does not make it normal, right? And so I started to dive into this. And then as fate would have it, this whole gut brain connection thing fell into my lap after I was sitting in my naturopath's office. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Like crying. And I'm like, I don't really know. Like I'm studying this and none of it's making sense. And she just looked at me and she was like, do you want to talk about how your depression is linked to your IBS? And I was like, what are you talking about? And just like so confused. And so we spoke more about how this whole gut brain connection and how you can use food to help your moods and how your moods can really influence your foods. And just, it's a two-way street and working that together. And so that's really what set me on my nerdy ways of using food as like, I mean, medicine is like the new hot thing to say, but really it's just a thing that sets you free when you know how to use it properly.
Mm-hmm. The whole gut brain connection thing is something like, obviously I'm not anywhere near as studied on it as you are, but it's something that I know has come to my attention in recent years. And I feel like it's becoming a little bit more mainstream where people are starting to realize that there is a very important connection there, and that as unsexy as it sounds about like healing your gut and all that stuff, and maybe weird, and some people might be a little grossed out by that idea, but it's like, it's really the root of everything. And this is more of like a tangent that I want to throw in, but like, I remember years ago, I might've been in like 2nd or 3rd grade, maybe 4th at the oldest. And I think it was called like Weekly Reader. Did you guys have that in school?
Mm-hmm,
like those little newspaper things?
Yeah.
And the big story on the front, the title of it, I remember, it's the only title I remember out of all of the ones that we ever looked at. It was called The Bacteria in My Gut. And I don't remember. I should probably try to look it up and see if like that article is still out there somewhere. But I'm pretty sure it was talking about how there's good bacteria in your guts as well. And like all bacteria is not bad necessarily. But I feel like, okay, that was back in like 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. That was ages ago at this. I mean, it was 2 years ago but it's ages ago. And it's like that knowledge was kind of already out there, but you know, it just either wasn't mainstream enough or people weren't paying attention, or it just wasn't the sexy, cool thing with all the fad diets. And so I like that we're having this conversation about how your gut is kind of the core and the center of everything. Can you go into a little bit more of the detail of why that is or how it's connected?
Of course. Like
that was a really long-winded lead up to that really simple question. I'm sorry.
Because one, I didn't know that book existed, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited that was there. Because I mean, the father of modern medicine, right? Like he's like, all disease begins in the gut. Like I want to put a positive spin on that. Like all health begins in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
Like how beautiful is that? And we can control that by the food that we eat. So in quick terms, welcome to Gut Health 101. Your body is made up of bacteria. You're actually 90% bacteria. And it's a balance between this good and this bad bacteria that starts from utero. So when you're pushed through the vaginal birth canal, you're covered in this healthy bacteria, and it grows between the ages of 1 to 3 into this 3-pound mass that controls literally every single thing about you. Like from, yes, your digestion and all that kind of stuff that we think, but also like what your hormones are like, what your skin is like, how your moods are, what your energy levels are like every single thing about your immunity, all housed in your gut. And so when you can understand this and control it to your best ability, you can thrive. You can have all of this just surplus of life, which back in the day when I was like depressed and anxious, I saw these people like all this energy and vibrancy. And I'm like, how many coffees did you have today? Like, what is this?
As I sit here drinking my coffee. It's organic though. It's organic.
I love it. But as we grow up, like it's different now. And I'm really excited about like when I have babies and the difference, and like, they're not being fed like Twinkies and all this kind of stuff. It's more, we're paying attention to the health world, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But like back in the day, it was, my mother was a nurse and well-intended, but like, if I even looked at her funny, she threw antibiotics at me and was just like, take these, like whatever. I had no idea, right? Like good intention, right? Bad outcome down the line. I can't tell you how many ear infections I had or how many like throat issues, all this kind of stuff, always taking antibiotics, as well as like my diet. Like my nutrition was A1 steak sauce and a ramekin. I wish I was kidding. That hard shell Hershey's cacao topping and a different one. And then like Cheerios on like in a cup of sugar on top of that. Like
What?
disgusting, like absolutely disgusting. I still
Now, I
like
like
talk to
all of
my,
those things, but not together.
oh, like it was like I had like different like meals, like not
Oh
all
my
together. It was
God.
like, okay, I would have my, I don't know why I would have A1 steak sauce and a ramekin. Like I still question my dad on this. I'm like, what were you doing? He's like, I don't know. You're just weird. And I'm like, all right, cool. But like you look back at that and I was like, okay, so I was just like wiping out my bacteria
Yeah.
because I wasn't eating properly. I was really loving antibiotics because, you know, instead of taking a nap, I was like, here's a medication. And then I was taking medications for like my anxiety and my depression. And then I was like taking birth control and I was just doing all this kind of stuff because that's what they told me. Like I
Right.
wasn't taught to question this. I was just taught like, this is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I've learned over the time, I'm like, like floored. I'm like, what was I doing to myself? I'm like freaking out. And as I come to know, like you can rebuild it. That's the good thing, right? And it takes time, it takes effort, it takes a shift in pattern. But what came to this bacteria is it controls everything. So when we can nurture it, we can feed it with this fibrous foods, with the diversity, with the colors, with the natural things that life is supposed to have and nutrient dense foods, we can actually get back to living optimally, not just surviving.
One thing I want to ask you about is in the things that I was reading and learning about as far as the gut health and how different foods can be inflammatory for different people. You know, like an apple might be okay for one person and inflammatory for somebody else. Is that something like kind of based off of what you're talking about? Would that be set in stone or can that kind of be fixed where like the person who has a reaction to an apple, who something we would think we should all be able to eat, you know, is that set in stone for that person or can that be fixed for lack of a better word?
I love that you ask. And this is actually one of the trainings I'm doing tomorrow with my Facebook group is that like, I loathe those food sensitivity kit tests things. Like they instill so much fear and they don't even test the right things. And most often than not, and I've tested different ones, right? So then I'll take one from one company, one from the other, and I'm apparently intolerant to all spectrum of food. Like it just doesn't make sense. And I'm like, they're not consistent. It's too new. And then they create these new food fears. And so you're eliminating all these different foods and you're weakening your digestive tract. And so what even women that come into my programs and work with me, they're afraid of like, say, gluten or dairy or soy or shellfish or peanuts or legumes, whatever have you. Once you actually take away the gut irritants, which isn't the food because a healthy gut can digest foods. If you have a strong metabolic function, if you really pay attention to your temperatures and all that kind of stuff, your body should be able to digest those foods. And so when you take the right steps in the right order, you're able to get back to eating normally. And yes, there's a difference between like a food allergy, which is like when you eat a peanut and you swell up and you need an EpiPen. Yeah, don't touch that peanut. Like just stay away from that. But if it's something where like in a few hours you're a little bit bloated or you're feeling a little bit brain foggy, that has to do more with like why your stomach isn't digesting that food. And because a food intolerance is when your body can't break down that food. And that doesn't have to do with the food. That has to do with why your body can't break down that food.
Okay.
And so when you train the digestive enzymes to get stronger, to fight it off, just like a muscle, you can get back to eating normally again. And there's really I'm not saying you're going to house pizza every day and like you're just like in on the cheese, but you can handle a pizza night from time to time with your girlfriends. Like you don't have to fear reading labels and being hypersensitive and all this kind of stuff, because that's what it does, right? When we get these tests or when we have no idea what's going on with us, we start to fear, and I had that too. We start to fear everything, like to the point of I eliminated 13 different food groups and thought that was normal. I was like, this is interesting. Like this is, and it was like every time you eliminate one, you have to eliminate like 3 more. It's like you're good for 2 weeks and then you're eliminating something else and something else. That just shows that's not right. You have to be strengthening that muscle, not eliminating the food.
Right. I always wondered about that too. I'm like, how does that heal just from like not eating it for a while? Like that doesn't
exactly.
Like all you're doing is ignoring it.
Yeah. And then you see people getting stuck in this hamster wheel. They're like, oh, I went on like Whole30. I cut it out for 30 days and then I add it back in. Oops, I'm now sensitive and I flared up worse than ever. It's like, no, you haven't had it for 30 days. So you don't have the enzyme in your gut. That's why you're freaking out about it. And you didn't heal the root cause as to why your gut is leaking to begin with. Like you're just, it drives me bananas.
I wish everybody could see the head smack right now, the face palm. Yeah, I always, just from a normal, a healthy perspective, not even necessarily a gut perspective, like I've just never been a fan of any diet that tells you you can't eat something, especially like when it comes to, I don't want to knock anything. So I don't know, maybe I shouldn't call it out by name. Well, let's call it keto.
I don't want to name drop, but keto.
Now, I followed a plan in the past that was keto-like, but it was very like it was hard to explain because it was like, here are some guidelines, but there are no rules. You do what you feel is right for you. Like, you want to eat this vegetable, eat this freaking vegetable. Like the whole basis behind it was, you're an adult. You can decide what you're going to eat and what you're not going to eat. Whereas I'll have people like, well, I'm following this certain diet plan, keto or not, any kind of diet plan. Like, I'm following this and I can have Brussels sprouts, but I can't have carrots. How does that even make any sense? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it's a freaking vegetable. If you want it, just eat it. It's not like I could see the difference between like, it's telling me I shouldn't have this chocolate chip cookie. Well, okay then. Then maybe you shouldn't, maybe let's try to stick to the healthy stuff. But also, if you want to have the chocolate chip cookie, have the freaking chocolate chip cookie, like.
Exactly. And that was the thing that hit me forefront, right? Was just, especially with IBS and healing and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, I want to eliminate all FODMAP. What? Like, that means going out and having a social life is really going to be a struggle, or going over to friends' houses. It's really going to be a struggle, which you see with different diets. But like, if it's low carb and stuff, you can usually figure that out, especially nowadays with like cauliflower rice and what have you everywhere. But when it comes to things like that, and you're cutting out major food groups, you have that first initial fear of like, oh, what do I do? But then you're committed because you're like, nah, I'm in this, I'm going to heal. And then 2 weeks in, you're like, never mind. Like, I don't want to do this. But then you start to believe like that it's the food's fault that you haven't, or that it's your fault that the food elimination isn't working. So then you convince yourself, oh, I got to eliminate more, and I got to be more strict. I got to do stuff this way. And it's like, no, like, understand that it's because you're eliminating these foods, you're not actually getting to the root cause of what is causing these flare-ups. And that is the stomach issue. That's metabolic function. That's nurturing this gut-brain connection. And it's just wild to see what is evolving in this whole diet world and the business. And because at the end of the day, it is a business, and seeing how that all comes. And so really, anyone that's listening, like, if you're ever approaching something and it's telling you to eliminate major food groups, just put it down and walk away. Just be like, no, that's not my jam.
Put the diet plan down and back away slowly. Nobody needs to know.
Exactly.
So can you share a little bit then about, so what are some things that we can do to figure out what the root issue is? Yeah.
And so this is where, like, getting diagnosed with IBS or any kind of gut trouble, start with yourself. And so I have a gut diary. It's a gut tracker journal thing. And it's paying attention to what you're eating, how you're eating, times you're eating, symptoms that you're feeling when you're feeling them. Are you eating enough variety of foods? Like, yes, maybe like with the whole, like, MyFitnessPal, we're seeing that you're hitting your macronutrients, but are you hitting your micro? Do you have a good balance between fibers and insoluble fiber and soluble fiber, and making sure that these two things are matching? And so I think so quick we jump on this whole diet bandwagon. I'm just like, here we go, but we don't know why we're doing it. And so when you can first start with a journal and then bring that journal to someone you trust, whether it's your GI doctor or your GP, to be honest, isn't going to really know what to do with that. They're going to be like, great, IBS, and then move on to the next thing. Find someone that is specialized in that field, because your gut is so freaking important. You want to make sure that you're ruling out any other thing that could be the issue. But then you have your journal and you want to start making the nutritional meat swaps around in that. That doesn't mean like eliminating things, but understanding like, what can you be adding in so that your basal body temperature goes the right way, so that your metabolic function is going the right way? And it sounds super sciencey, but honestly, it's so simple. We overcomplicate it. We undervalue the power of consistency and the variety, and really tuning into the things that need to be happening. So the first step would just be journaling. figuring out what that is.
You're kind of making me think, going back to this whole idea, this whole premise, I'm seeing it stretch across all these different fields and just different areas of life, that we have all the answers we need within us. And what I'm thinking with this is what, like our body has the ability to heal itself. Like, not that we don't sometimes need help, obviously, but I like the fact that you're pointing out that like we've overcomplicated everything. I'm sure way, way, way back when it wasn't this freaking complicated, but there's been so much introduced to us. And so, the antibiotics and processed foods and all these different medications and things, and not that everything's necessarily inherently bad or doesn't have its place, but I think we've gotten so overwhelmed with everything that we've forgotten how to listen to our own bodies and tune into what's really going on.
Exactly. And we're so quick to outsource. Like, we're so quick to be like, oh, well, keto worked for Katie in the corner, so I'm gonna jump on that wagon, and then I'm gonna take these supplements, and instead of actually tuning into what my body is telling me, and then I'm gonna do these IV infusions, and then I'm gonna fast for like 28 years because I think it's cool. And it's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? It doesn't work that way. And what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for people that go through my courses or anything, but the foundation is really tuning into what your body is telling you, having the right tools, and moving forward from there. But you don't need to outsource it. You don't need to really throw sprinkles on something like this. Like, it's get down to the foundations, understand that like functional foods are the way through, and we actually need more food to heal the body, not especially as women, like as women of reproductive age. We need food, we need fat, we need things to get our cells going. And when we're restricting and we're limiting and we're trying to get these abs and doing all this stuff, and you're like, no, like, of course you don't have a period. Like, you're so stressed out, you don't know what's going on. Of course you are bloated, and these fake nut fiber things that you're taking, and all the overdoing it on like nuts and seeds, as opposed to like, I don't know, liver and lard that your body loves, like going that whole route, even though it doesn't sound as sexy, like going in these bars is so much better. But like, oh God, it drives me bonkers to really, and like, that's why I always tell my girlies that like, it's all about the mission of finding your way home to yourself. And once you get rid of, when you're working against your body for so long, like when you're in pain and you have symptoms and you're holding weight when you're not, and like you're inflamed and like doing that kind of stuff, it takes you out of your body. You start to fight against your body, and you stop trusting your body, and you really kind of move past it. When to figure out what's going, you have to welcome yourself home. But to do that, you have to trust yourself. Like I say it time and again, you cannot be at war with your body and win. It does not work. You're going to continue trying to manipulate and outdo and underdo and all this kind of stuff until you figure out how to trust.
Yeah. As a personal trainer, I meet a lot of people for just like a couple sessions, and we talk in the beginning about their nutrition and, a little bit about what's going on there, where I can maybe offer some tweaks and stuff, not like a whole food plan, obviously, but, just see what's going on. How much water you're drinking, how much are you eating in the way of veggies? Are you eating out a lot? That kind of thing. But what I come across so often, and especially with the women, like you were saying, is how little we're eating. And I've been on this push for like the last, I don't even know how many years, of trying to open their eyes to the fact that if you really want to lose weight and you want to get healthy and be fit, you probably need to eat more. Like, you can't be afraid of all this stuff. And being at war with your body, where everyone's trying to cut calories so that they lose weight, and that, eat less, move more. It's like, okay, yeah, that might work in the beginning, but how many times can you keep cutting your calories down as your body is going to adjust, right? Am I right in saying that your body's going to adjust to the amount of calories that you're eating? So you can only cut so far before you push yourself into survival mode. Yeah. and then that's it.
And, like, we have to listen. Like, I know I made this mistake where I was like, no, this protocol has to work. This protocol has to work, because all the gut gurus are telling me this, or all the whatever are saying this has to, or even the people I studied with, like, this is what they were teaching. And I was like, but my hair is falling out.
Yeah.
And my skin, like, if you guys go on my website, you'll see it's just like this massive thing that took over my entire face. And that went down my entire backside of my body.
Oh my God.
You know, missing period. I literally could not hold my temper. So if I was looking at those things, I was not healthy in the slightest, right? Like, these things were not working, even though I was textbook healthy. Like, I followed my gut protocols to a T because I was so committed. I was so desperate that I was like, all right, I'm in this. But then looking at it, I'm like, no, like, that was not working. And that's why you have to listen to your body and really trust that it's guiding you through. And it might not look like the keto or carnivore or whatever is super sexy nowadays. Like, it's going to look like whatever your body needs to get through the day.
I'm assuming, of course, the free method encompasses a lot of the stuff that we've already been talking about. But how did you come up with that?
Yeah. So the free method, one, I love a play on words. Two, I noticed going through the gut protocols that I was on, it's usually you'll see the 4 R's where you have to remove, repair, reinoculate, reintroduce, reinoculate, repair, whatever, 4 R's. I was following those and I was like, I'm so confused why I have to keep doing this. Like, and those 4 R's are the same thing as the elimination diets. And then you add things back in and you test to see if your body reacts. And I was like, so why do I have to keep doing this? Like, if this was working, why do I literally do this every 30 days? It didn't make sense with a new food, with something else. And then I got down to 13 different food groups that I wasn't eating. And I was like, this is bananas. Like, and at that time I couldn't eat bananas. Like, I was like, what the heck is this?
I was going to ask you, like, could you eat bananas?
No, I was like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, now I can't go a day without eating them. But it really made me, and I have a history of an eating disorder. So adding that on top of everything, I had struggles for years. I was like, well, this is triggering. Like, right. And like, as I had been healing, like, I didn't understand. And I'm sitting there and I remember, like, specifically this one time was just like going to my friend's birthday party, and it was at an Indian restaurant, but I knew I couldn't eat any of the food. So I was like sipping my smoothie before, and I was trying to get ready, but like none of my clothes fit me. And my friend looked at me and she was just like white. Like, she was so heartbroken. And she's like, you don't see it, do you? You don't see what's wrong. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And just like really dove into this whole, okay, so how do I actually get to so like free is like foundations, reprogramming, exploring, evolving. And so we get to the foundations and we go back to what I mentioned earlier is it's not just the food, it's what is actually the root cause. And we work from there. And then we reprogram the gut, because the gut is just super cool. It can reprogram itself, but not just the gut, your mind. Like, this whole gut-brain connection and the way we approach health and the way we handle life and the way we handle stress and all that kind of stuff really impacts our gut, because 90% of our serotonin is housed in our gut. 50% of our dopamine, our reward hormone, our GABA, our norepinephrine, all of these things that help keep us calm, cool, and collected, housed in our gut. So if it's not being fed, or if it's being fed the wrong things at the wrong times, it's going to freak out. And it makes sense that you're just kind of grasping at whatever will help because you don't feel embodied. So we reprogram that. And then we explore different options of eating. And this is where those super sexy foods come into play, like liver and lard. And I know those aren't fun to like talk about or eat, but like your body loves them so much. And we need them in our body. And this doesn't mean like everyone's like super into these like huge salads, like raw foods and going this way. I'm like, oh no, like, oh my goodness, please stop doing. And they're like, I don't understand why I'm bloated. I'm eating all the healthy foods. I'm like, cause you're eating like, what? Like you're eating like a goat. Stop eating that, please. And like, you need foods that really can be digested and your body can use. And this is where we come into play and we do body temperatures and all this kind of stuff, really programming your body.
Yeah. And lard's gotten a really bad rap. Cause I remember hearing a girl in gym class once, we were playing volleyball and she was yelling, come on, get the lard out of your ass.
So good for you.
It's got a negative connotation.
No. And you're like, no, I'll keep it here. Exactly.
I'll keep my lard. Thank you very much.
Exactly. And then it's all, and then we go into like exploring how to actually make this a lifestyle. So how do you reprogram your brain to get back to eating normally, where you're not afraid of cheese and like you can enjoy pizza, and we explore how do we go out to eat at restaurants, how do you read labels, how do you live a life and know, like even my boyfriend now, like, oh my God, so cute. Like we'll go to grocery stores and he's just in there. Like now I know what foods that I eat and don't eat, but he's on it and he's reading these labels and he's like looking at his supplements and he's like, oh, canola oil's in this, babe. And he's like, I never did this before you. I'm like, you're welcome. I don't really know. Cause he has like digestive issues. And he's like, oh, and he's like so into it now. And he's like so excited where it doesn't feel like something that's intimidating or like overwhelming. He's just like, this is fun. It's kind of like a spy kind of thing. I'm like, I chose you.
Or maybe you were some sort of beacon that drew him to you. And he's like, I think I need her in my life.
Like, I need to poop
for multiple
normally.
reasons.
She looks good. But yeah, I mean, it really is all about like, and so like the free method is just, it honestly is giving you your freedom back. Like that, I think we're missing. And we love rules. We love control. We love all of this kind of stuff, but we don't really have a nutrition routine like we do the rest of our lives. Like we have, our morning routine, our night routine, our work routine, all this kind of stuff, but we don't really know what our nutrition routine is. And so my mission is to really emphasize that to women on how they can really add that into their life while also emphasizing this beautiful gut-brain connection and how when we eat in this way, we live intuitively, we're more focused at work, we show up better for our partners. There isn't this anxiety and depression that's creeping in, which nowadays everyone has it. Like it's something that we're all struggling with. And I know this is the silent pandemic that is also going on right now. And so when we can really understand how to use these foods and lower this whole reaction in this nervous system and all this kind of stuff, we get back to being ourselves. And maybe you don't even know who yourself is because it's been something you've been dealing with since you were 10 years old, like I did,
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. And that going back to the brain connection too, with the gut, like you were saying, I think it's important and interesting to note where these chemicals like the dopamine and all that are housed, because I don't know that I remember learning that they were housed in the gut. I remember learning that we had them and that they were connected to the brain and how we react and process things. But I don't remember initially, like in my psychology classes or whatever, learning that it starts in the guts and knowing that that's kind of the core. Like, I mean, I just think that's the only word I have for it, but that's the core, the root of it. Understanding that connection so that we start taking care of ourselves the proper way so that our brains then also can thrive, the brain fog, the stress, all of that. And even you're making me think like, I've probably always done this, but I've noticed it more in the last couple of years since I've had my sons, that whenever I physically feel stressed, I'm starting to notice that my stomach like tenses up too. Like I always kind of paid attention, like, oh, my back and my shoulders. But I've noticed more how like I'm actually like reacting in my gut as well. Like, so stress is going to affect you there as well. That makes sense because that's where your chemicals are, coming from. Of course.
I mean, there's so many phrases around it, right? Like I'm so anxious, I'm nauseous, or like I have butterflies in my stomach, like all things like that. And they're true. Like I can't tell you how many times before realizing this, like when I would get anxious for a presentation or something, like I would instantly have to run to the bathroom. I'm like, and I thought that was normal. I was just like, it's anxious poops. I was like, it's so normal.
You know what? I've always thought that too. You're right.
Yeah. Like I was just like, oh, like this is totally normal. And I never put like the 2 and 2 together until I was like, oh my goodness, why does no one talk about this? Or like when I was super sad, I would then become constipated. And that's because when you have high neurotransmitters in your brain, that's anxiety. You have high neurotransmitters in your gut, that's diarrhea and cramping. So that's why you got to just like book it out. Then you have low neurotransmitters in your brain, that's depression. You have low neurotransmitters in your gut, that's constipation. And these two things go hand in hand with every client I've ever come in contact with. Like every single one. It's if you're struggling with depression, that's what you have. If you have anxiety, you have the cramping and the diarrhea, and they go hand in hand.
Wow. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. This is so important. And I hope that everybody in the entire freaking world finds this episode. This has been so great. And I'm like I said, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation. Can you let everyone know how they can find you, how they can connect with you, if they want to do this free method, how they find that.
Yes, you guys can all come hang out with me over on Instagram. I'm literally in my DMs all day over at LauraMartin_H2H. If you're on Clubhouse, I do that too. I run panels over there. And then if you want a free guide for how to build plates that support your gut health, make sure you go to healingtohappy.com/beatthebloat. Yeah, and that's all my stuff. I mean, there's more, but if you come over to Instagram, you'll be able to dive your way through on how to get started and all that good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. This has been amazing and a perfect conversation for this. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
That was seriously a super fun conversation. It really is so important to not only learn how to tune into your spiritual intuition, like we've been talking about in some previous episodes, but to tune into your physical body. All of this is connected. You need to reconnect with yourself as a whole person, and that involves not fighting your physical body. Your body's talking to you all the time. And there are things that this theme keeps coming up of, we just, whatever we experience as we're growing up, and it makes sense, whatever we experience as we're growing up, we just view it as normal because that's all we know. It doesn't make it bad necessarily, but there are things that could end up down the road being a little bit detrimental. So making sure that we pay attention to what's really going on and things that may have been building up over time that we've just gotten used to, but it's still negatively affecting us. It's just something that we've labeled as normal and decided that we're always going to have to deal with it, and this is just the way it is. I've never ever believed that, well, this is just the way something is. I've always believed that things can improve. And there can be different views, different perspectives on what that means for improvement. Sometimes things can't be fully reversed. Sometimes there's only so much you can do. But in the cases where you can reverse things, you can change things, be open to that possibility. Start to accept the fact that you already have the answers within you. Your body knows what to do. It is a beautiful thing that is perfectly designed. So even if there are things that we would label as being wrong, it doesn't mean that we can't do anything about it. I want to believe that we can heal everything. I really do. And I think somewhere in me, that's what I believe. But I'm not here to make any big, wild, false promises. But talking with Laura about our gut-brain connection and gut health and how important that is, your body can heal itself in many ways. So start where it starts, in the gut. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that if you have been suffering or think you've been suffering with any type of digestive issues, anxiety or depression or things like that, that you can take a look into some of these principles or maybe even dive in fully to this free method that Laura offers and start to see some real positive change for yourself. We have to take care of our energy in all ways, including the physical. We cannot, like she said, we cannot be at war with our bodies and win. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it. Please take a screenshot, do a screen flow, go ahead and post it to your Instagram, your Facebook, tag me, tag Laura, let us know what you liked, let us know what was helpful, let me know what you need more of. Please feel free also to hop into the Energy Within Facebook group. That is where we can talk more about these ideas that have been coming up on the podcast. You can let me know your feedback. I also come in there as often as I can to do group Reiki sessions, live card pulls, meditations, and sharing with you how fitness, how taking care of your body, your physical energy ties in with every other type of energy in your body. I'd also like to invite you to book a Reiki session with me. Reiki can absolutely help you find a sense of clarity, a sense of calm and peace, and maybe help you face up to the reality of what's been going on and what you need to address. And one of those things could be GI issues. Healing the spiritual energy around your body can work so beautifully in conjunction with the physical things that you are doing to heal your body. So I highly recommend coming and doing one of those sessions with me. They are, at the moment, only $25 for a mini session. It's all virtual, and it is so much fun. I am loving all of the stories, the clarity, the transformation that is coming out of women doing these sessions with me. I would love for you to be one of them. To continue on the fitness journey, I also invite you to hop into my virtual fitness studio and take care of your body with movement. There are multiple options for how you can take part in that. There's an all-access membership, which gives you all access to all of the live classes and all of the recordings and any pop-up classes that I might do. If you know that the live class times do not work for you, there's an on-demand membership where you just have access to the recordings because that's all you need. Both of those start with a free trial. All access starts with a 2-week free trial, and on-demand starts with a 1-week free trial. You can also just randomly pop in and out of classes. I do drop-in rates for $6. You can do any of the recordings at any time for only $6. So you can find the link for all of these in the show notes. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you as always for listening, and I'll see you next week.